For one of Hungary's most notorious serial killers, we actually know surprisingly little. Béla Kiss was never questioned by the police, never brought before a court, and never made to answer for what he did in front of an earthly judge. For years, he lived under an ordinary name, seen as just another ordinary man, completely unnoticed, completely unremarkable. No one knew who he was, until a twist of fate brought everything he had hidden into the light. They found the barrels in his shed. No one thought much of them at first. He said they were for gasoline. But when the police finally opened one, they did not find gasoline. They found the body. And the man who put it there was already gone. Welcome back to our podcast. This is Start with the Weird, and today we are going to talk about the Cinkota vampire, also known as Béla Kiss, and I have Roderick with me, and my name is Reika. So, Roderick, your first question would be, what? A vampire? Vampires don't exist. Well, he wasn't really a vampire.
Sorry, what is the question here?
There is no question.
Okay, because you said your first question here, so I was like, okay, I'm waiting for the question.
So I was theoretically asking a question in your place. Why is he a vampire? But he's not really a vampire, and he is referred to as the vampire of Cinkota. Well, when I was doing my research, AI said, and some other sites said, that he would strangle his victims and they would have puncture marks on their necks. So he would drain their blood. But actually, when I was doing a little bit deeper research, I didn't actually find any sort of signs that he would drain them of their blood. So this whole vampire of Cinkota, I think, is just sensationalized a little bit.
You know, I've had a similar experience researching him, but on the other account, it seems like some people are making these kind of bold claims. And then if you look deeper, there is nothing to basically back it up. For example, on Reddit post that was discussing his case, someone commented that he had inappropriate relationship with his mother and he was abused, as a child, I guess. And I went through maybe 10, 15 sources trying to find any other information about it, and I could not find it. So unless that person was there, and witnessed all of that, I have no idea where they got it from.
Yes, so this guy is super important. And just to follow our, niche of this season, he is also Hungarian. So I was actually reading the Hungarian Wikipedia entry, which was extremely confusing, but it had a paragraph on the psychology of this guy. And they also said that he probably had inappropriate relations with his mother. And also he probably strongly hated women. But everything I found about him is just so contradicting. Like he's just a ghost, like he had multiple personalities. He's a very interesting case. And anything that I found about him, I found contradicting information about those facts. Well, we can't call it facts. So yeah, he's an extremely interesting case.
It is true. Like I also had other encounters like this while searching for information. Anyway, we'll discuss it as we go. But just for our listeners, I want to say that, not everyone in Hungary is bad. Not everyone is a serial killer. And because we keep going through all the bad people,
Obviously, but I think it's a good niche for this season, just to pick Hungarian serial killers. And then in the next season, we can go with another country, I guess.
Yeah, geographical. Why not? I'm just pointing out that, hey, you should not take it against the people. Recently, I found out that, for example, Rubik's Cube was invented by Hungarian or was born in Hungary.
Rubik, that's correct, yes?
Yes. So good things came from Hungary as well. So let's focus on that part.
Okay, so let's jump right into it. So I'm going to start with the beginning, but to be fair, there wasn't too much information about his childhood. And again, it was all over the place. So I tried to put it together into one paragraph so it makes sense kind of chronologically. Kiss Béla was born in 1877 in a small Hungarian town called Izsák. Nothing usual here, just a pretty ordinary start. His parents, Kiss János and Varga Verona, were what you'd call everyday people, nothing fancy, nothing that would make you think anything strange was coming. That's pretty much all we know about his childhood. We We also know, well, I read who his godparents were, but it's not really important because their names doesn't come up later on. And at this point in his life, as I said, nothing really stands out as dangerous or even unusual. Between 1898 and 1900, he lived in Vienna or Beach, where he worked for an electrotechnician. So again, this was an information that I have found outside of Wikipedia, and it's probably true. This is where he started basically forming close relationships with female domestic servants, which would become as a repeating pattern later on. What we know about his early life, where he worked and what he was doing, full of contradicting information if you look around the internet. So I tried to put it together sort of. Later on, he started working as a tinsmith, learning the trade in a completely ordinary way. First under a widow, Findra Mihaly, in a small workshop on Peterdi Street 1 in Budapest. That's in Budapest, and he started working in Cinkota later. The reason why I got confused here, because Cinkota used to be a separate village, but now it's part of Budapest. So I think this is why it's a little bit contradicting when it comes to information. But anyway, he opens his own tinsmith and repair shop on Kenyermező Street in Budapest, which is actually in Cinkota. Then in mid-1905, he officially gets his trade license in Cinkota and relocates there by the end of the same year. On paper, it all looks clean. He's established, self-employed and functioning exactly like a respectable tradesman in his community. And even in 1907, he bought a multi-volume history series, The History of the Hungarian Nation. Now, it's not really that important, but basically what happened when he bought this book, before approving the purchase, the company ran a background check on him, and he was described as a reliable, financially responsible, morally sound, modest, and creditworthy person. On papers, he appeared completely normal, and he was also noted by people around in the village as a very intelligent and multilingual person. He spoke 7 languages, and so he was super, super smart, apparently. But he later returned these books when he couldn't keep up with the payments, which was at that moment wasn't that particularly outstanding. So no conflict followed, just, another quiet, uneventful transaction in a life that still appeared stable. But this pattern that he would spend money and then he would be behind on his payments, it becomes very important in the events to come. While living in Cinkota, he built a reputation as one of the area's most popular bachelors. In the eyes of the community, he was hardworking, polite, and well-liked, someone people actually respected. He was often behind on his rent, but that never seemed to match how people experienced him socially. He sometimes refused payment for smaller jobs or delayed billing entirely as a form of goodwill. On the surface, he came across as generous, intelligent, and socially above what his background would suggest. So far, he seems like a nice guy. Everyone respects him. He's likable, he's intelligent, and he has a good job, and he has people coming back requiring his services as a tinsmith.
I think it just shows you how easily people are fooled, just because you have some certain persona or you give out a certain vibe that they would basically negate or disregard the actual red flags or the actual things that would stand out and go against this idea that you have of the person.
Definitely. So that image was not entirely consistent. With people of higher social standing, especially when speaking about women, he became noticeably more reserved and awkward. With people of his own status, however, he was more open, more relaxed, almost easier to read. Women reportedly visited him frequently during the day, and when they did, he locked the door and left a small sign behind saying things like "not home" or "back in an hour." And then there were the strange details people did not really understand at the time. Dr. Kadi Aladar, a royal deputy district judge, had lived in the same house as him for years, from May 1911 until his own military service, so he knew Béla Kiss well. According to his account, there had always been a certain haze around Kiss's personality, a sense of mystery that never fully cleared.
So I have a question. How do we know about the differences in his demeanor between how he interacted with the people of higher social status and people of his own caliber?
Because there were hundreds of interviews after they realized what he'd done, and they would interview everyone in the village. And Budapest, as I said, Budapest is like there, right next to it. He was working for people who had higher social standing, not just, his own status, not just the same level as he was in. So that's how they do know.
Okay.
He was not seen lazy or someone who avoided work. In fact, he appeared to be highly skilled in his trade, even considered as a first-rate talent in his field. But he also said Dr. Kadi, the neighbor, he also said he sometimes heard noises at night sounding like heavy objects being dragged across the floor or dropped with force, small things easily dismissed individually, but harder to ignore when they started to form a pattern. When Kadi brought up that he wanted to keep pigs or chickens in one of the 3 sheds in the yard, Kiss told him it was not a good idea. He said they would simply get stolen from there. Instead, he offered to build a chicken coop for him in the large garden, saying it would be much safer there since the pigsties were indeed set quite far away. Kadi agreed to the arrangement. But after about 2 years of living there, Kadi noticed something odd. There was a locked door on the path leading to the sheds, blocking access. He objected, saying he had every right to use the sheds and that the path could not be closed off. Kiss replied that he had bought the sheds from the landlord that intended to demolish them and that he would turn the area into a garden instead. In the end, he really did demolish 2 of the 3 sheds, leaving only 1 standing. He stored tin barrels in the remaining shed. So this part was particularly hard to research because there was so much information that could be true or not true. And there were a lot of things that came that probably this guy, Dr. Kadi, said, but also I found different sites that it would said it was somebody else saying these things. So I don't know if this actually official statement of a witness or just later on came with the legend, so to speak. But I also got confused at first. He did give him permission or told him to have these sheds, and then later on he wasn't allowed to use these sheds.
Regarding this, I'm thinking even during that time, when the whole story came, to light, I think a lot of people maybe wanted to be a part of it, so maybe that would give them a sense of importance, right? Belonging to something bigger and sensational. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people actually added things to it just so they could say like, oh yeah, I was there. And again, like you said, this whole thing became kind of mythologized. People are adding things, oh, he was a vampire and everything. People do like to add details on top of things. So I don't know. So far, it seems like a cohesive picture, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if some details were over-exaggerated.
Over-exaggerated, and also because he was a kind of dodgy person, I think he would have been giving different information to different people. So I think when you're a fraud or a con man, sometimes, not just sometimes, you have to be really smart and remember the things you say to people and keep it consistent. But I can imagine it's hard to stay in that role, to remember what lies did I tell to this person or that person. So that might be another reason why people were giving contradicting information. And what you said as well.
I think especially if we're talking about living in a small community like a village, like everyone knows everyone, so like you said, it's not that easy to keep your worlds apart.
Yes, but it is a village, but now it's part of Budapest. So it wasn't just like, an isolated village. It was really close to Budapest. So he would have clients and people coming from Budapest to him. So it's not just, his world wasn't as small as, like Piroshka in the previous episode. According to official records, he never had a wife, but Michael Newton's Encyclopedia of Serial Killers describes something different entirely, saying he was married to a woman named Maria, who was 15 years younger, and by 1912 they were already living together in Cinkota as husband and wife, but that same account says she later became involved with a musician named Pál Bihari, and by December 1912, both of them disappeared from the village, with Kish telling neighbors she had simply run off with him, after which he brought in a housekeeper, Jánosné Jakubet, while around the same period people began noticing young women visiting his home briefly and not returning, and then metal barrels started appearing in the yard, which he explained to Trober Adolf as petrol storage because of the approaching war. So I would just like to add here that I didn't actually search for this encyclopedia of serial killers or how accurate Michael Newton's research was, because I also found, again, contradicting information about another woman who is one of his victims, and it wasn't called Maria. Her name was Julia, and she would have been a chef from Budapest. So this is from Hungarian Wikipedia, and apparently she had two children from Béla Kiss, and she moved to Cinkota from Budapest, and she left the children to the White Cross. So I'm not sure where this information came from that his wife would run away with someone, and I don't know which part is the truth. Was it Maria or was it this other woman? But he did have two children.
I personally read like a book specifically focused on Kish. I forgot the author. And it said the same thing, that he was married to a woman that was 15 years younger than him. And like that the woman disappeared, and he told everyone that she ran away with this musician, and that everyone in the village, I'm sorry, I'm just consulting my notes, everyone in the village knew that she had an affair because like the guy kept on coming, to the house when Kish was not home, or like they were seen walking around in the forest, but apparently no one told Kish about it. About the affair. And then just one day, according to the book, he came home and his house was closed, like locked. So he was waiting there till midnight, and then he broke in and he found, that's what he says, like that's the author says that Kish said. And then he found a note that said that she ran away with this guy, and Kish said that he was so frustrated and angry that he burned the note.
Who did Kish speak to? Because that's the thing, like he never spoke to anyone.
They said actually to his neighbor, at least in the book, they said that he spoke to his neighbor because after his alleged wife, right, allegedly disappeared, he fell, according to the book, he fell very ill, and his neighbor, the doctor, was trying to help him out, but Kish was like, what's the point, like even if something happens to me, it doesn't really matter. He was like, I don't know, feeling hopeless and abandoned. And then like after some time in the book, they say that he did hire this woman to basically help him out around the house and help him to recover.
Interesting. Yeah. It's really hard to tell what is going on. It would be, I don't know if anyone asked the children, but obviously they wouldn't have been reliable sources either if we don't know how old they were or where they were or what happened to them.
But the book actually never says anything about the children. No, at least I didn't remember.
Absolutely couldn't find anything about the children, just that they existed. But what happened to them? Did the mother take them with them? If this woman was his wife, was she the mother or was another woman? No information whatsoever. Or it's very contradicting information, that very little information that I found.
I mean,
Yeah.
even description of his appearance is very contradictory. In the book, they said that he appeared almost a Tatar, right? And another source, like it's just some random article I found on the internet, they said he was tall and blonde, which both of them are the opposites of each other.
Yeah, there's nothing factual about this guy whatsoever besides the fact when he was born and when he got his license. Anyway,
I guess we could just be making things up, as we go about him, and no one could tell us otherwise, because how can you fact check?
Right. So when the First World War broke out, Béla Kiss was 37 years old. Because of his age, he wouldn't have been drafted immediately. But on August 24th, 1914, he still enlisted as a reservist volunteer and left Cinkota in early autumn, handing his property over to his housekeeper. Some accounts say it wasn't that straightforward, that he didn't actually go voluntarily, and that the house was instead transferred or even sold to a man named Trauber before he left.
So regarding what you said, that someone said that it's not true that he enlisted voluntarily. Again, we're only speculating here because there is no factual information. But I do believe on some level that he didn't enlist voluntarily, because knowing what we know about what he did, why would he do that and not dispose of any evidence? You understand? It looks like it was very forced.
I think he kind of wanted to disappear and even die in the eye of the public so they wouldn't search for him. He didn't really care that they find what he left behind. But anyway, let's carry on. Before he went, Béla Kiss gave a sealed package to his housekeeper, Jánosné Jakubek, with strict instructions. If news ever came that he had died, she was to take it straight to the town hall and have it opened immediately. Years later, after the killings were uncovered, investigators finally opened that package. Inside was a postcard album filled with hundreds of postcards along with a few erotic photographs. So there's your answer. He knew they were going to discover everything.
Why would he include erotic photographs of him, of another woman, of what?
Of course not about him. No, he had photographs of women, and that was the evidence. And I think he did it as any serial killer would, to taunt the police that, look, I got away, and look what I've done. And now you think I'm dead.
Okay, let's see what happens after.
So yeah, he was really smart. Don't forget that. And among it all was one final detail. Béla Kiss had received 174 marriage proposals from women. When the owner of the house, Márton Krasinski, came to Cinkota in 1916 to inspect the property ahead of renovation work, he was told by Béla Kiss's neighbor, the pharmacist Béla Takács, that Kiss had already gone off to war in 1914. While looking for usable materials, the two men entered a storage room next to Kiss's workshop. Inside, they found 17 barrels stacked on top of each other. All of the barrels were sealed with lead. They broke open the first one with an axe, and as soon as they did, a strong, unbearable smell came out. Inside was a sack, and inside the sack was a woman's body sewn up. The wood alcohol in the drum was used as a preservative. At that point, they alerted the authorities. When Chief Clerk Gyula Huska arrived with the police, all 7 barrels were opened, and each one contained the body of a woman. After arranging for an examiner to remove the victims discovered in the metal drums, the police conducted a search of Kiss's home and the surrounding grounds, discovering other bodies that had been buried. Each victim, including those buried, had been preserved in alcohol. The bodies were still recognizable and could be easily identified if given names to work with. So before we go any further, do you have any comments to add?
I'm wondering if he preserved them, because he could not bury them somewhere, or because he was revisiting them.
So they were sealed with lead.
Oh, okay, so he could not. So he was just trying to hide them.
He was trying to hide them, probably.
That's the thing. You see, I also read this thing that you said about the sealed containers, but in the other source, I found out, I read that the bodies were dug out in the forest.
I read, again, loads of contradicting information about this, but apparently he would also taken bodies to a dumping ground somewhere near. And I don't know how much it is true or not true, but he did have about 30 victims that they had found. So
But the containers had only 7.
The containers had only 7, yes. So I can imagine that he couldn't hide every single victim in that small space. So
those containers were really a sore, I think, for a lot of villagers for a really long time. Have you come across that information in your research?
Well, they thought that he was storing alcohol, as in drinking alcohol.
And it was prohibited during that time.
It wasn't prohibited, but 7 barrels of them.
Because in my research, I found out that, like you said, that villagers thought it was alcohol, but he was claiming that it was petrol. And then, he was talking to someone and he said, oh, do you think that me, respectable kind of man, would store this much alcohol unlawfully?
Honestly, don't know. I didn't think alcohol was prohibited. Maybe the amount of alcohol would have been.
I guess with this story, it's Osvonomi one. It is what it is. We will never know.
We'll never know. I don't think we will ever know any parts of this story. It's just, it was one of the hardest things to research, the whole life story of this guy, because it was just full of contradicting information.
I think it's even worse than the story about our first lady. What was her name? Lady Battery?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was a big question mark, but this is just something else.
Yeah, it's almost like he didn't really exist, but he did. Nothing about him is actually factual. Besides that, he murdered 30 women.
People. Okay.
So, according to the death certificate entries, all 7 bodies had strangulation marks on their necks. 4 of the bodies were identified during the post-mortem examination. 1 was identified based on police investigation, and the clothes on the body and the identities of 2 were unclear when their deaths were registered in that certificate. Frigyes Karinti, as a staff member of the Újság, that's the name of the newspaper, wrote the following on-site report, which was published in the 12th of May issue of the newspaper. So Frigyes Karinti is, by the way, a super famous poet from Hungary, and he's my favorite poet ever. Check him out, guys. I stood there in the cemetery in Cinkota in front of the tin barrels and watched one by one as the contents of the open barrels were poured out onto the autopsy table. Tin barrels of different heights, equally tinned, precisely with thorough work. Those who opened the first barrel did not doubt for a moment that the other contents were the same. Although this assumption meant an unimaginable horror, and those of us who were there at the opening, all of us took it for granted that a small woman fell to the ground from the smaller barrel and the larger one from the larger one. And after the second barrel, we also knew how to turn the barrel, how deep to reach, and where to grab the string on the neck of the emerging female head, where the loop is, where it leads down to the legs, and how they are knotted. This is how a proper, precise collector works, one who understands his craft and he likes order. So I think this article, as I said, he's my favorite writer and he's really good with words. And I think he pretty much summarizes what this guy was.
I mean, it does send the chills down your spine. I could truly imagine what he was feeling when he was standing there.
He is a collector. That's what he is exactly. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew exactly how to get rid of these bodies. And he was taunting the police later on as well, 100%.
Okay.
Faced with the most serious case of his career, Detective Chief Nagy Károly took swift action. First, he informed the military that Béla Kiss, if still on the front, would be detained immediately. Within an hour, the soldiers had received the instructions for the manhunt. Next, he held and questioned the scared housekeeper. So I just like to point it out that Béla Kiss, his name means Béla Small, and the chief detective who was investigating his case for years, his name is Károly Nagy, which means Károly Big. So I find it a little bit funny.
It is pretty ironic, I have to say.
Ironic is the proper word, yes. So he then alerted local postal and telegraph authorities to the possibility that Kiss had an accomplice and instructed them to halt any correspondence intended for Béla Kiss. The horrific discovery was quickly becoming known throughout Cinkota and would soon appear in Budapest's newspapers. Nagy wanted to be sure that no accomplice could get a warning to Kiss. The investigation was made more difficult than usual by a few factors. The army was dispersed and disjointed, and many of the Hungarian troops were imprisoned. Even worse, Béla and Kiss, so the first name Béla and the surname Kiss, were quite popular Hungarian names. They were probably a lot of individuals in the army with the name Béla Kiss. Lastly, Dr. Nagy addressed the victims' identities. The metal bins provided relatively little hint. Nagy found what seemed to be a faint MT on a handkerchief and the stitched initials KV on a piece of clothing. He discovered Mrs. Jakubet sitting in the kitchen, nearly paralyzed by dread, inside a house that she had maintained spotless for 2 years. "Please, sir," she pleaded, "I know nothing of this terrible thing. I knew Béla Kiss only as a man who was kind to me and paid me well." So I would just like to add here that, again, with this housekeeper that he hired, I'm not 100% sure what the relationship was, because in some places I read that she was just his housekeeper who lived in the house. And in some cases, she apparently admitted at the investigation that she was his lover as well. So I'm, again, really confused with this guy.
I don't even know what to say to that, because I think we said a million times that, yeah, it's very confusing and very frustrating. So I don't really know what else even to say to that.
No, nor me. It's just like it's all speculation. Everything is just speculation about this guy. Yeah. Have you ever watched or read the book Catch Me If You Can?
I've seen the movie.
Yeah, he's a little bit like that, but his crimes are obviously far more
Much worse, yeah.
worse than just fraud. But that's what he is. He just like lives these loads of different lives, basically. So just to continue, she showed Nagy and his detectives Béla Kiss's bedroom, which they thoroughly inspected but discovered nothing relevant to the case. Nagy noticed another locked door that is Béla Kiss's secret room, she told Dr. Nagy, as in the housekeeper. "He told me never to enter it and never to let anyone in."
From the book that I was reading, they said there that he said that he kept there the clothes and things that his runaway wife left behind, and he thought it was very pathetic, but he still could not let go of it, and he had like all these clothes neatly placed around on the bed, so that's why he didn't want anyone in there.
I don't know. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Okay, at this point, my memory could be a bit fuzzy, again, because I've read so much and none of it makes sense. But I think she said, at least in the book, they said that she was there one time and she did see the clothes and she did see the barrels there.
Everyone has seen the barrels.
Yeah, but I mean in that room, specifically in that room. So she did see the clothes and she did see the barrels. And then that's when he told her, it was during the time when he was sick and she was looking after him, after his wife allegedly ran away. That's what he was doing, that he was keeping these things as a memory of her. And after after that, she stopped entering that place and like he locked it. So that's what I read.
So she found trophies of the wife.
Yeah, like, but he didn't say it was trophies. He said it was like keepsakes, because he could not let go of her.
Oh, interesting. Like this whole wife thing again. I've read reports, psychology reports, and some people said that he did have inappropriate relationship with his mother, and this is why he hated women. But also some reports said that he was so disappointed and heartbroken with his wife that that's when he started hating women. But again, the chronological order of the things was so hard to research. But if what I found is believable, then he already started these relationships way before the wife moved to his house.
So from what I researched, like he made attempts basically, but he never killed anyone until he killed his wife.
Yeah, that's what I've seen. But apparently the first victim died in 1906, which was way before his wife moved into his house.
Basically 6 years.
6 years,
before. Yeah. I actually was looking how old was he in 1912 when they moved together with his wife into the village that is named, and this is where you told me the name.
Cinkota.
Cinkota. Yeah, I'm very grateful that you're reading these kind of parts because like I could not with the Hungarian like places names. Anyway, so he was around 34, 35 years old. So if his wife was 15 years younger than him, then she should have been around 19 or 20. She was pretty young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think back then that was the normal, so to speak. I don't think it's normal, but they thought it was normal. I mean, my grandmother, who was born like way after this period, she was 16 when she married my grandfather.
Wow.
And my grandfather was 20.
Wow.
Now that would count as a crime.
Absolutely. But again, different times. Like I'm thinking like he had plenty of money and like some certain social status. We don't know much about Maria or whatever her name was because again, we don't even know if they were married or if she even existed. But if she did, I'm wondering, did she think that like, oh, I got lucky because I got the guy with the money and with the status and with the business?
So this is where the whole point that I made earlier becomes important. He did not have a lot of money, but he did have the appearance of having a lot of money. So I'm sure that women would have found themselves lucky to find a man like him.
Mm-hmm. I think so too, at least in the beginning before they knew the whole scale of things.
Yeah. Mrs. Jakubet reached into her apron and took out an old-fashioned key to enter the locked door. Nagy quickly saw that the room was lined with bookcases full of books. The sole furnishings were a huge desk and a desk chair. Dr. Nagy discovered an enormous amount of correspondence between Kiss and several women inside the desk. Additionally, he discovered an album with pictures of over 100 women. At this time, Dr. Nagy started to fear that there could be more victims than they had discovered so far. So far, I don't really know how many they actually discovered, but anyway, Dr. Nagy then returned to the hundreds of letters, the majority of which were organized into 74 packages so that correspondence from the same women could be stored together. All these letters were respondents to a marriage ad in the newspaper. Each wanted marriage. Kiss got 174 marriage proposals. It was later confirmed. He continued to interact with 74 of these women over the years, some going back to 1903. As he read the several letters, something else became very evident. These ladies were being defrauded by Béla Kiss of their savings and, in many cases, all of their finances. Nagy interrupted his reading to look around the room's numerous volumes, as in books. He was astounded to find how many had to do with poisons and strangulation techniques. Nagy questioned how Kiss could communicate with so many women and invite so many of them to his house without anybody suspecting him. him. Someone must have had some idea of what was happening. Mrs. Jakubets was the first person Dr. Knight spoke to. She sat in the kitchen as he gazed at her. Abruptly, she let out a scream at him. "I'm just a simple old woman. Don't send me to prison." She admitted seeing lots of different women who came to visit Béla Kiss over the years, but she claimed that she did not know their names. "I scarcely ever said a word to them. I was only a servant and spent the night in my own home. What Béla Kiss did with these ladies was none of my business. They were all city ladies, not peasants like me. They would come for a day or two and then go away." At the end, the police released her, convinced she knew nothing about the murders. Everyone in the community who knew Kiss, including his neighbors, was questioned by Nagy and his associates. Béla Kiss was again well liked by all, and entertaining several ladies wasn't seen as all that out of the ordinary for a charming, attractive bachelor. The married men of the town envied him. So again, I don't know if this housekeeper was involved with him in any sort of intimate relationship.
From this encounter, no, rather from this report, it seems like she wasn't, because if she was, I think she'd be pretty jealous, or like she wouldn't say it's none of my business unless she was trying to, I don't know, distance herself from him. But I don't know. For some reason, I don't think that they were involved, or at least they were involved seriously. Maybe they had a couple of like one-time things, but I don't think it was an actual thing. But you did say that he hated women, but at the same time, he truly seems to have enjoyed the attention that he got from them. Maybe it was kind of like a validation thing for him.
Hard to tell, but if he did hate women, I think he was doing it for the money. But just to go back to the housekeeper for a second. So what I've read was that she would be living in his house, sleeping in the kitchen, and time to time he would visit her at night. And that was all their intimate relationship. But at the same time, again, I have read from this report after they recovered the barrels that he was actually impotent.
That would be a good reason to hate women, though.
It would be a good reason, yes. So that could be a possible reason as well. But then he wouldn't have had any sort of relationship with this woman.
True. And then he probably wouldn't have had children if they existed in the first place.
It's just so weird. Like, what do you believe? What do you not believe? Maybe just leave it in the comments if any of you knows any more than...
If any of you were there,
if any of you is like 100 and was that 12?
A lot of years old.
Let us know what happened.
By the way, about those barrels, when people started picking up on their existence and they started thinking that it's alcohol stored, like I read that police actually got interested in him, and one of the policemen tried to basically become friendly with Kish to gather more information, and instead, he found Kish to be a person of great stature, impeccable character, like amazing man. And again, in this book about him that I read, they said that besides the housekeeper and of course the women, this policeman was the only other person that he invited to his house, and they frequently were hanging out in his house on the regular basis.
Could be.
Yeah, like I think we can say that about anything that we discussed so far. Yeah, could be.
Yeah, that's the general comment on this guy. Yeah, could be, could have done it, could have said it.
I think this is how we should name this episode. Béla Kiss could be.
The could have been guy. So, to carry on, everywhere he discovered a woman who had communicated with Béla Kiss, Nagy called the local police agencies. After a while, he was certain he knew how Kiss lured his victims. Kiss did not send any letters to his victims that would have exposed him, as Nagy guessed. Instead, he posted carefully crafted ads in the matrimonial pages of newspapers, usually asking for details about the women's financial situation. When a letter was received from a woman, Kiss would pay the potential target a visit and shower her with money and affection. At the same time, he'd ask about her relatives. He focused solely on ladies who did not have close family nearby and would not be missed if they disappeared. So again, just to go back to that book he purchased, and they did the check and then he sent the books back. So this is what happened. He would get money out of women and then he would have money, but then he would spend that money on the next victim probably. And then he would be behind on his rent and wouldn't have money again until he would defraud these women. He was going back and forth.
What I wanted to add, his wife, but was found also dead, and the guy that she was sleeping with, that I personally as well read that he was also posting ads offering to read fortune, like a fortune teller to women, and this is how he also would basically come in contact with them.
I have read that, yes, but not everywhere. So I don't know, again, I don't know what part of the internet is the truth or the facts about him, because the Hungarian information, none of them mentioned it. I honestly don't know. Right. Dr. Nagy eventually connected the KV initials he discovered on a victim's clothes to Madame Catherine Varga, or Varga Katalin, beautiful young Budapest widow with substantial assets. She owned a successful dressmaking company, which she liquidated when she moved to Cinkota to be with her future husband, Béla Kiss. Catherine Varga had no family members who would have missed her. Nagy had also discovered some garments at Kiss's home with the name Pesadik Julia embroidered on it. One of Nagy's detectives looked through old court documents and discovered that two women, Pesadik Julia and Komáromi Erzsébet, had sued Béla Kiss for stealing their money with the promise of marriage. The lawsuits expired when neither of the ladies appeared in court and could not be located. So this Pesadik Julia was apparently the mother of his children from another source. I don't know what happened there. Anyway,
If they exist.
They did exist, but we don't know if she was the mother or the wife was the mother.
Okay.
Nagy had enough evidence to prove that Kiss had murdered 30 women by that point, but only one of the 7 victims had been identified in the metal cylinders. Then, eventually, Tóth Istvánné and her daughter-in-law paid Dr. Nagy a visit. Mrs. Tóth informed the detective about her daughter Margit, who had traveled to Budapest for employment. Margit introduced her mother to Béla Kiss on one of her trips, and he persuaded the mother to offer him money in exchange for Margit's marriage. Margit later accused Kiss of failing to keep his word. When Mrs. Tóth traveled to Cinkota to confront Kiss, he claimed that he only wanted to postpone the wedding and that Margit had grown agitated and fled to America. Dr. Nagy eventually figured that when Margit Tóth visited Béla Kiss at his house in 1906, he compelled her to compose a letter to her mother stating that she could not face the disgrace of Béla Kiss's rejection and that she was going to search for a new love in America. Kiss strangled her after she finished writing the letter, hid the corpse in the metal container, and sent the note to her mother. So that was in 1906, way before the wife disappeared or moved in. And just to go back to the children. So the funky thing about the wife having the children, and he would have said that his wife left him with her lover. If she truly left him, then she would have taken the children with her, but we know that he killed his wife and also the lover. So if his wife was the mother of his children, people would have asked what happened to the children.
It does make sense when you point it out, but at the same time, like I said, you saw reports that he was an impotent, you get me? So how did he have children in the first place? Unless the impotent part is not true.
I don't know. Could be. It could be. Just going back to that, could be.
Regarding his way of killing women, it seems like it was always strangulation, right? And upon watching so many episodes of Criminal Minds, they always say that in the TV show that this is about control, basically, because you literally, see the life leaving the person's body as you squeeze basically their throat or use some other methods of strangulation. And they did say that it often appeals to impotence as well, because this is their only way of having sexual gratification and like having control over women that they otherwise cannot possess.
Yeah.
Again, but that's from a TV show again, so like that's not actual science, I guess. So if there is any, I don't know, psychologist or something that is listening to this, like please let us know if there is any merit to this idea.
I mean, yeah, it would be lovely if any psychologist would say their opinion. But again, what are they going to base it on when there's no fact about this guy? So yeah, he could have been impotent, but he could have had his issues coming from his mother, or it could have been because of his wife. You don't know what happened.
But you're saying how can a professional make an opinion if we know nothing? We're making a whole podcast about the guy and we know nothing. So like if we can do that, like a professional definitely can do that.
Well, let's hope that a psychologist is listening to this. On the 4th of October 1916, Dr. Nagy received a communication from a Serbian hospital reporting that a soldier named Béla Kiss had died of typhoid in 1915. It was followed by another message stating that Kiss was still alive and hospitalized. Dr. Nagy immediately went to the hospital, which was then under Hungarian control. The detectives arrived at the hospital after the sunset, and when they got to the ward where Béla Kiss was recovering, they were taken aback. The guy in Kiss's bed had died, but he was not Béla Kiss. Dr. Nagy ensured that everyone in Hungary knew that the monster of Cinkota was still alive. Tips flowed in from throughout the country, and not just from the country, but from all around the world. Several people believed that they had seen Kiss after his alleged death. They've seen him between 1916 and 1939, but he was actually never caught. According to the November 16, 1920 issue of the newspaper Esztergom, a member of a Szeged family serving in Africa writes that Béla Kiss, who served in the French Foreign Legion, was shot in the knee south of Eile in North Africa on October 21st, and since he could not run, fell into the hands of the natives who killed him. The August 9th, 1921 issue of the newspaper Ellenzék reports the following. Private official János Bach, who has just returned from Russia, claims that Béla Kiss, the mass murderer of Cinkota, lives in Moscow as a Communist Party secretary. Bach spoke with Béla Kiss, who is married to a Tatar woman. Kiss exchanged the death certificate of a fallen soldier at Valjevo, and that was buried instead. In October 1922, a telegram from a detachment of the Czech border police in the Sátoraljaújhely area arrived in Budapest. The telegram stated that a man had crossed the Czech-Slovak border into Hungary near Sátoraljaújhely with the appropriate passport, and that some members of the border police believed he was the murderer of the Cinkota Béla Kiss. However, the criminal records revealed that, in fact, his alter ego Sándor Kiss, a high-profile international burglar with multiple convictions, had crossed the border in September. Around this time, the police also received accurate information from a completely reliable source that Béla Kiss had fought on the Serbian battlefield, but had not fallen, was in Moscow, and was the head of the draft board there. In 1924, a captured deserter from the French Legion told French police about a comrade named Hoffman who boasted of his strangulation murders. However, the man was never found, as he had also deserted. Béla Kiss, the mass murderer from Cinkota, became a second lieutenant in the French Foreign Legion, reports the 8 Órai Újság of June 11, 1927, which also claims to have been sent to China on a transport. The Nyírvidék of November 14, 1928 also reports that Kiss was serving as a non-commissioned officer in the 4th Colonial Regiment under the name Lajos Fekete. The 27th of September 1929 issue of Friss Újság reports that Kiss Béla, under the name Béla Fenyves, was promoted to sergeant in the French Legion, where he was given the number 8645T. He was shot in the stomach in a skirmish in Africa and died. His company had gone into battle against an Arab fort called Kolombeshari. The skirmish was over and Kish Béla was already leading the team through the ruins of the fort when 2 shots were fired. Kish Béla collapsed. A Hungarian medic, István Köd, jumped to his side and determined that the sergeant had been shot twice in the stomach. The alleged sergeant, Béla Fenyves, was already dying when he said to the Hungarian medic in a dying voice, "I see that I must die. My real name is not Béla Fenyves, but Béla Kiss. I killed the women in Cinkota. The police of the whole world are looking for me." Béla Kiss wanted to continue his shocking testimony, but he could not. He died there on the stretcher in the desert. His body was wrapped in a sheet, as was the custom there, and buried in the military cemetery of the fortress. The 1st of August 1933 issue of Friss Újság published an article stating that Béla Kiss, the Cinkota mass murderer, has been captured. The headquarters received a report that after 17 years of hiding in America, the monster with the tin barrel has been captured. He is married and has 3 children. However, it also notes that the notification received from America at the Budapest headquarters should be treated with reservations. According to some news, the Cinkota mass murderer was seen appearing in the Chesapeake Bay area and that Béla Kiss was reportedly in contact with a gangster gang there until his capture. The American authorities were flooded with letters in which the letters' writers stated that the man who, according to the reports, was identical to Béla Kiss had come to America in the years after World War I and had also played a role in the kidnappings that took place in the early 1930s. Based on the photographs received from America, the witnesses believed they definitely recognized Béla Kiss, but stated that they would only be able to give a definite and definitive testimony if confronted. In 1934, a Hungarian visiting New York recognized him in Times Square. In the same place, in 1932, a homicide detective, Henry Oswald, known only as Camera Eye because of his extraordinary memory, saw Kiss. According to Hungarians in New York in 1936, Kiss, who was in his 60s, was a house supervisor in an apartment building on 6th Avenue. The August 18, 1939 issue of the Nyírvidék Szabolcsi Hírlap mentions that the Nyíregyháza police station received a new arrest warrant issued by the Budapest police headquarters, according to which the search for Béla Kiss, the master tinsmith of Cinkota, the mass murderer, was renewed after 23 years. Based on the renewed arrest warrant, the police continued their search for the notorious mass murderer. Despite all the news and rumors circulating, Kiss was neither arrested nor brought to justice. As noted by David Everett in Human Monsters, despite all his alleged globetrotting by Kiss, no other murders were ever attributed to him. Unfortunately, that does not necessarily mean that Béla Kiss stopped killing, only that if he did, they were not traced to him. So here we go.
Regarding his death and how they found out about his death, I read a similar thing, but again, it was not the same. So what I read is that the letter about his death came to the village and the landlord decided to basically clear out his house. And this is how they found out about the barrels and everything that happened. And so the case was kind of they were investigating the victims, of course, but the murder was killed, right? So what can you do about it? They did send someone to check, and they got the papers that he was killed. But then throughout some time, they were getting reports that someone saw Béla Kiss around Hungary. So this is when the detective decided to go and check, and he spoke with the nurse, and the nurse said, the one that was taking care of him, that it's so sad that such a young, intelligent boy had to die that way. And he asked, what do you mean young? And she said that the boy who died, Béla Kiss, was 20. And this is how they found out that he exchanged his papers with the guy who died I think it was in Belgrade or Belfast. I think in Belgrade.
Belfast is an island, so it's in
Yeah.
Serbia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, so there was a chase, and every time he would appear, he would disappear, and in time to time, he would leave someone who would die in his place, and he would steal their identity. Some people would say he was in Russia, some people would say he lived in America, and some people would say he would join the French Legion and was a soldier in Africa. So I think he planned this whole thing out. He was there in a small Hungarian village, obviously committing all of these murders. And I think going back to that, he was a con man, and it was hard to keep up this appearance now. He decided that, okay, I'm going to pretend that I am dead. And I don't care if they find what I've done, because I'm going to disappear. But I'm going to leave all these traces just to show them that I'm smarter than they are.
Again, could be.
Could be.
So what I read, like, again, super contradictory, that before, like, his murders, before he started, and somewhere they say that, like, basically his wife cheating on him was the trigger why he killed both the wife and the lover, and then, like, he went on this murderous spree. But, like, again, you said that there was a victim in, like, 1906, 6 years before he was allegedly married to Marika or Maria. But before Maria. So before that, he was posting these ads saying that he would read fortune to women, or he would meet them in real life and he would, like, befriend them. One of them was extremely wealthy and they were just, like, meeting. And after some time, when he basically kind of gained their trust, he would offer them to come to his house and read, like, give them a reading with a crystal ball. He would take them by some transportation, but they would never get to his house. They would exit the vehicle in the like, close to a cul-de-sac, and then they would walk the remaining path on foot. That's why they could never identify where the house of Kish was. And he would give them a reading, and then he would strangle them, but not kill them, and take their money. And they would find sorry, I forgot about the part that he would give them a drink that had something in it, like you mentioned that he had books about poison, and that would make them feel dizzy. They would fall on the floor. He would strangle them, but not till the point of dying, and he would take their money, and then they would find themselves, like, somewhere, like, in a whole different place. So yeah, that's what I read.
Again, could be.
Could be, yes. Could be. Some of those women were from Vienna. Like, he was posing as Sir Hoffman or something like that.
Yeah, that was one of his names, and that name would come up. He used the name Hoffman in 1924 when he was in the French Foreign Legion. That's why they thought that he was there. But anyway, the Hoffman was the name he would use often with these marriage proposals as well.
So yeah. Could be.
Yeah, that could be, man. So this was our episode for today. It was a little bit chaotic because it's hard to talk about someone when you don't really know what to say about him or what is true, because we kind of want to stick to the facts and not come up with anything that is not true. But with this case, it was extremely hard to do so. But anyway, guys, whoever was listening, thank you for listening. It was Start with the Weird with Reka and Roderick. And hopefully next week we'll have Stacey back.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Joining us. So that's great. I can't promise it, but hopefully.
Who are we going to talk about next time?
We are going to talk about the angel makers of Nagyrev, who were it's a group of people. They were operated between 1911 until 1929, and it's a super interesting case. So tune in.
It sounds like it, yeah. Anyway, at this point, let's go back to our day jobs.
Yeah. So thank you guys for listening, and we will see you soon.